Okay, so before we go in the swimming pool today, we're going to do the NOP and EAP refresher training. So it's a bit of a warm-up for lifeguard training in pairs. Actually, there's only 4 of you, we do it individually. I'm going to give you a pack of cards and we're going to go through lifeguard bather loads. So we've got, on one section, we've got the type of session or the area of the pool being used, and then the other side we've got the numbers, so like lifeguard numbers, so maximum bather loads. So just quickly for a few minutes, a bit of a warm-up, can we just match up the session to the bather load? Obviously most of these you should know. There might be 1 or 2 which I may have caught you out on. You can do it in pairs if you want to, and we'll go through the answers at the end. So type of session and the bather loads associated with it, and then we'll go through the reasons why the numbers are different. So if I'll give you a couple of minutes just to get going. If you've got any questions, let me know. And this is also a good test of how many of you were paying attention when you reread the NOP and the EAP. This is literally taking no more than a minute or 2. So Rachel's just about finished. I'll give you 1 minute. Obviously, there's 1 or 2 sessions on there we don't do anymore, so it might be a bit of a surprise to you when you know the bather load.
Jamie, have you got the radio with you at all?
Yeah, can you just turn your radio down, please? Okay, so before we go through the bather loads for each pool session, can we just go through why is it important to stick to bather loads style as lifeguards? So why are we sticking to these numbers? What can be the dangers?
Yeah, overcrowded.
So overcrowded, yeah, certain sessions, obviously there's more features, blind spots, things like that in place. And obviously we cap the bather load to sort of combat that. So obviously your main role as a lifeguard is to know these bather loads, make sure you're being proactive with your head counts, and let reception know when you're hitting sort of 66% of the bather load onwards. So let's go through the first session. So the easy peasy one, everyone should know, is the teaching pool. So what's everyone got for the teaching pool bather load? 24, good. Next session, let's go through the main tank and beach area combined. So that is both areas of the main pool combined together. What do we get for that one? 158. I didn't specify on the cards, but once you get past 104, obviously it says it in the NOP, remember we turn all the features off once we get past 104 people in the main pool, obviously because they reduce visibility or turbulence, so make sure once we get past 104 we are turning those off. The beach area then, 54. Main tank, 104. Aqua sessions, 30. Obviously that's because of the instructor, they can only watch up to 30 people, and believe it or not, that's the problem we've had recently if reception made a mistake or 2 of letting people pass. So it is important that it's kept at 30. We only have 1 lifeguard on there. If it goes past 30, then we would have to increase the lifeguard, and in fairness the instructor wouldn't be able to teach that many people. Next session we've got inflatable. Everyone know the head count for the bather load for the inflatable. This is where 75 or 100. What do we think, Rachel? 75. Okay, it's 75. If you think about it, 2/3 of the main tank are out of use because obviously the inflatable takes it up, so it is reduced to 75. What have we got for the wave session then? This is the one that will throw people out because obviously the waves haven't worked for over 1.5 years. So some of the new staff.
I would still say 72.
72. Does anyone agree or anyone disagree?
I've got 100 blood rate.
Okay, the actual baby load is 100. Obviously, if you think about the waves, obviously benefit of the doubt, you've never worked a wave session, so this is more for sort of to throw you, see if you remember from reading it in your PSOP training. Obviously, we don't run that session. It is 100 because a meter either side of the main tank, and at the front is out of bounds, so it reduces people in. That's why it's down to 100. If you had more than that, obviously waves running, you'd have people colliding, crashing into the wall. We keep that in there because in case we decide to refurb the wave machine, it could down the line be reintroduced. And the last one we've got is clubs. So clubs is 72. That is because it's up to 12 per single lane. I don't think Dolphins, the club, will ever go up to that much, unless it's a gala, sort of the warm-up, you might have up to 12 swimmers in the lane. Usually sort of the session sits comfortably about 30 to 40. Has anyone got any questions about any of the baby loads? No? Everyone happy with them?
Yeah.
Okay, if you just put them back into piles, we'll move on to the next bit. The next bit we're going to do in group work, we're going to go through dealing with customers and types of communication. Obviously, a big aspect of the lifeguard role is good customer service. So we're going to go through types of communication we have, and then we're going to go through what messages we might regularly need to communicate with customers, and then how we should communicate, so like behaviour, that kind of thing. Okay, so if we divide our whiteboard, if we've got a whiteboard each, there is a blue roll there. If we divide our whiteboard into 3, so we're going to have to split it into 3 like this. So we're going to have on this side types of communication. In the middle box, I want you to jot down what messages we might need to communicate to customers when we're lifeguarding on poolside, what intent messages, common ones, types of communication, examples, and then in the third box, how we should communicate to customers. What is good customer service? How would you like to be spoken to as a customer if you were somewhere? That kind of approach. So I'll literally give you a couple of minutes to jot a few bits down. So think types of communication. How do you communicate as lifeguards? What things do we use? Yeah, so I'll give you the first one, which Ben said, verbal communication. Yeah, only need a couple of examples in the types of communication. Examples of what kind of messages you relay to customers when you're performing your job role. What examples, when you speak to a customer, what are you usually relaying towards them? And then obviously the last box.
Yeah. Stop.
Okay, give you another minute. So if you're not onto the third box, if you just start the third box, then we'll go through a couple of them.
Short.
30 more seconds, and then we'll discuss it.
Yeah.
Whistle. Don't overdo it. Sound. How should we work out? can't do it.
Couple more seconds, guys. Okay, so we'll go. So going back through. So we're going through communication, dealing with customers, all sort of aspects, whether it be complaints, praise, just giving customer service. It's an important part of the job. So we're just going to go through types of communication, some examples, and then have we got the correct approach for it. So types of communication then with customers. So we've obviously the easy ones, verbal, the standout one, obviously verbally communicating to them. What are the types of communication we've got then? Yep, so you whistle, so obviously busy call sessions, verbal communication is always not the most practical, so you've got your whistle. Anything else? Hand signals, a important one as well. Hand signals, why are hand signals good? Can you think of a...
It's universal.
Universal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so say someone obviously can't hear you, universal to sort of stop people like that, they tend to understand those types of, that type of communication, so it can be a good reinforcement tool. We've got any more? You've got alarms, obviously, yeah. So you've got drown alarm, fire alarm, evacuation alarm. So that's pretty much most of the types of communications we've got. We could go on to radios and things, but we're more specifically looking at communicating directly with customers. So let's go through some examples then. So day-to-day duties, how do you communicate with customers? What sort of scenarios? When do you frequently have to speak to a customer? What sort of? So changing lanes, yeah. Whether it be a fast swimmer in a slow lane, a slow swimmer in sort of a medium lane, obviously that's a common occurrence.
Explain the full timetable or what session starts at when.
Yeah, timetables. Obviously, a lot of people come off sort of. They don't take how many people check online when they come on. They literally come into the session. You get members that tend to go to the gym and then obviously come straight for a swim after. They don't really check the timetable, so they might not be too sure. So you obviously got a lot of explaining to do then. Got any more? Yeah, big one, reinforcing pool rules, obviously keep people safe. So using these examples then, how do we communicate that to you? So how should we act when we're sort of approaching that customer? So this is important because obviously these things are important, but if you don't do it in a correct way, it can cause a problem, it can be not giving good customer service, and that's not what we're about. So let's go through some examples of how you relay this to. Yeah, you want to be calm, polite. Obviously, it's big thing for pool rules is reinforcing with why someone can't do a certain activity. Why can't you dive? Obviously, it's too shallow. If you explain that, as opposed to just saying you can't do that, you find if you give a reason why for a customer, then they're more likely to understand it. Have we got anything else?
I'd say a level of authority as well. If you're talking to younger kids like to mess about, you may ask them to do something nicely, but they might just
yeah.
You need to have a certain level that you need to follow this.
Agreed. Obviously, at the end of the day, when you're a lifeguard, the pool's your responsibility, so it's your sort of authority. Yeah, if you don't stand your ground, certain kids will obviously use that and obviously try and take advantage of it. So yeah, you sometimes have to stand your ground. Have we got any more?
Keep it short, still want to have a full conversation.
Yeah.
Keep it brief.
Good point. Yeah. So totally, if you're on pool side, you remember you've got to supervise the whole pool. If you spend too long dealing with something, you may miss an incident. So obviously, deal with it quickly, calmly there and then. If you can't, obviously you've got teamwork for backup. Okay. Any questions about this? Obviously, it's just making sure you use these things when you obviously relay this information, and obviously it can mean the customer will listen to you first time. It's giving good customer service, it's not being rude, and it obviously makes your job easier. Okay, if we can quickly rub the boards out, and we'll move on to the last section of the NOP and EAP refresher training before we move on to first aid. The last thing we're going to go through today is we're going to go through quickly pool access controls, and then we'll go through an EAP situation. So obviously pool access, so we're going to go through quickly why is it important to control pool access, whether it be when a session's on, when the pool's shut. Why is it, what kind of things do we do? Why is it important? If we don't manage pool access, what could happen?
Overloads go over?
Yeah, so the things we did at the start, obviously the bather loads, they're designed so obviously to make it safe for you to supervise a session. If you go over the bather load, it's putting people at unnecessary risk. Any other points with not controlling access?
People from public going to a private session that's been booked by certain people.
Yeah, I can think of examples when that's happened, when obviously a customer's just turned up into a private session, obviously they're paying for that privacy. Obviously you've got a disabled session like this morning on, they like to have the pool to themselves. Obviously they're a group, obviously if you've got random customers coming in, it's unsettling. And the big one as well is if the pool's shut and we're not controlling, obviously you could have customers coming into the pool when we're not open, and obviously they're not going to be supervising. It opens a whole variety of problems. So what things do we need to make sure we're doing then in terms of pool access? What should we be doing? Communicate. So we have radios. How often do we do a head count?
Every half an hour.
Every half an hour it's logged, but do you make sure you sort of every 5-10 minutes you have a rough idea who's in the pool?
Yes.
And obviously it's communicating it to reception. Reception, when they book people in, it goes onto the system, but when they're doing variety tasks, they're not going to be monitoring. And obviously they probably wouldn't necessarily remember every type of session as well. If we went to ask them now, do you think the receptionist would remember off the top of their head the session? Probably not. So obviously they've got a million things to get on with, so obviously you communicating to them makes the whole process go smoothly. At what point do we stop allowing customers through for a swim session? At what percentage do we sort of say no? So say our 100% capacity is 158, at what percentage do we tell reception they should obviously cease to let people in? Because obviously you take into account changing rooms, things like that.
Probably 85%.
It's actually 90%, but obviously when we sort of hit 60% onwards, we're constantly communicating. So obviously back and forth, so reception will say how many people they've let in, how many people come out. Obviously as soon as we hit 90%, you need to say, right, no more. They will stop allowing anyone else in, and obviously monitor it like that, because you take into account change